Daniel arrived on a Thursday afternoon, though later he would struggle to remember if it had been a Thursday at all. The drive had been long, longer than the map suggested it should be, and by the time he pulled into the driveway of the rental house on Maple Street, the sun was already beginning its descent behind a line of identical rooftops. The house was exactly as advertised, a small two-story colonial with white siding and black shutters, the kind of unremarkable structure that could exist in any American suburb. The lawn was recently mowed, the mailbox freshly painted. Someone had been taking care of it, though the property manager had assured him it had been vacant for months. He sat in the car for a moment after turning off the engine, his hands still gripping the wheel, and tried to remember why he had chosen this town. The reason felt just out of reach, like a word on the tip of his tongue. Burnout, maybe, or something to do with his mother, or a relationship that had ended badly. The specifics blurred together when he tried to focus on them, which the therapist he had seen twice before leaving had said was normal. Trauma does that, she had said. The mind protects itself. He believed her at the time. The key was under the mat, exactly where it was supposed to be. The door opened smoothly, no sticking or creaking, and inside the house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something else. Something underneath that he could not quite identify. Not unpleasant, just present. The furniture was minimal but clean. A couch, a coffee table, a television that looked newer than he expected. In the kitchen, the refrigerator hummed steadily. The cabinets were empty except for one, which contained a set of white dishes, for plates, for bowls, for mugs, as if someone had known exactly how much one person living alone would need. He set his bags down in the living room and walked through the house slowly, opening doors, checking rooms. 2 bedrooms upstairs, 1 bathroom. The larger bedroom had a bed already made with plain white sheets. The closet was empty. The bathroom mirror was spotless. Everything felt staged, prepared, waiting. That first night, he unplugged the television and sat in the silence, eating crackers he had bought at a gas station an hour outside of town. The neighborhood was quiet. No dogs barking, no cars passing. Through the window, he could see lights in other houses, the blue glow of screens, the occasional shadow moving behind curtains. Normal life happening all around him. He felt relieved by it. This was what he had wanted, wasn't it? A place where nothing happened. A place to disappear into routine and forget whatever it was that had brought him here. He slept deeply that night, which surprised him. No dreams that he could remember. The next morning, he walked into town. Maple Street connected to Main Street after 4 blocks, and Main Street had everything a small town was supposed to have. A diner, a hardware store, a library, a post office, a grocery store that looked like it had been there since the 1970s. He went into the diner first, a place called Nancy's, with red vinyl booths and a long counter with swivel stools. A waitress, maybe in her 50s, smiled at him as he entered. She was already pouring coffee into a white mug at the counter. "For you," she said, as if she had been expecting him. He sat down and thanked her. She handed him a menu, but before he could look at it, she said, "You must be Daniel." He looked up at her. The name tag on her uniform said Lorraine. "How did you know?" he asked. She shrugged, still smiling. "Small town," she said. "Word gets around fast. You're in the house on Maple Street, right? The one with the green shutters." He almost corrected her. The shutters were black. But he did not want to seem rude, so he just nodded. She took his order, eggs and toast, and walked back toward the kitchen. He looked around the diner. A few other people were scattered in booths, eating quietly, not talking much. An older man reading a newspaper, a woman with a laptop. No one looked at him. It was exactly what he had wanted, to be just another person, unremarkable, unnoticed. The food came quickly and it was fine. Not great, not bad, just fine. He ate mechanically, thinking about what he needed to do that day. Unpack, maybe walk around town more. Find the grocery store. He paid in cash and left. Lorraine waved at him as he walked out. "See you tomorrow," she called. He had not said he would be back tomorrow, but it seemed like the kind of thing people said in small towns, an assumption of routine. Over the next few days, Daniel fell into a rhythm. He woke early, walked to Nancy's for breakfast, then spent the rest of the day unpacking. arranging the few belongings he had brought with him. Most of his things were still in storage somewhere, or maybe he had gotten rid of them. He could not quite remember. The house began to feel more lived in, though something about it still bothered him. The way the light came through the windows at certain times of day. The way sounds seemed to carry strangely. Voices from the street, sometimes too clear, sometimes muffled. One afternoon, while organizing the kitchen, he found a mug in the back of the cabinet that he did not remember seeing before. It was different from the plain white ones that had been there originally. This one had a faded logo on it, something corporate, a name he half recognized but could not place. He stared at it for a long time, turning it over in his hands. Had he brought this? It must have been packed with his things, though he had no memory of owning it. He set it on the counter and forgot about it. That evening, he met his neighbor for the first time. The man was in his yard, trimming a hedge with manual clippers, working slowly and methodically. Daniel walked over and introduced himself. The neighbor's name was Richard, or maybe Robert. Daniel was not sure. The man shook his hand firmly and said, "Good to see you again." Daniel paused. "Again," he said. The neighbor smiled, a little confused. Good to meet you," he corrected himself. "Sorry, long day." They talked for a few minutes about nothing important. The weather, the neighborhood, the best place to buy groceries. Richard or Robert mentioned that the hardware store on Main Street had good prices, that Daniel should check it out if he needed anything for the house. Daniel thanked him and walked back inside. He stood in the kitchen, replaying the conversation in his mind. Good to see you again. It had been a slip of the tongue, obviously. People said things wrong all the time, but it stayed with him. The next morning at Nancy's, Lorraine greeted him like an old friend. The usual, she asked, already reaching for the coffee pot. He had only been there 4 times. How was the usual already established? But he said yes because it was easier, and because he had been planning to order the same thing anyway. She brought him eggs and toast, exactly as he liked them, though he did not remember telling her how he liked them. While he ate, a man in a booth near the back waved at him. Daniel did not recognize him, but he waved back politely. The man got up and walked over, sliding into the seat across from Daniel without asking. "Hey," the man said. "I wanted to ask, how are you settling in?" Daniel set down his fork. "Fine," he said. "Good, thanks." The man nodded, as if this answer satisfied him. He was maybe 40, with thinning hair and a face that looked tired. Daniel waited for him to introduce himself, but he did not. He just sat there, looking at Daniel with a kind of expectant expression. Finally, Daniel asked, "Do I know you?" The man laughed, a short, surprised sound. "Yeah," he said. "We met last week. At the hardware store." Daniel searched his memory. He had not been to the hardware store yet. "I think you have me confused with someone else," Daniel said carefully. The man frowned, then shook his head slowly, as if trying to clear it. "Maybe," he said. "Sorry. I've been working too much." He stood up and walked back to his booth. Daniel watched him go, then looked down at his plate. The eggs were cold now. He finished them anyway, paid, and left. On the walk home, he tried to remember if he had been to the hardware store. He had not. He was sure of it. But the certainty felt strange, like something he had to convince himself of. That night, Daniel could not sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him. Or maybe it was not the house settling. Maybe it was something else. Footsteps, almost. A creak on the stairs. The faint sound of a door closing somewhere. He got up and checked. Nothing. All the doors were closed, the windows locked. He went back to bed and eventually drifted off. But his dreams were strange and fragmented. He was walking through the town, but the streets were empty, and every door he passed was slightly open, as if inviting him in. He woke before dawn, sweating, and could not remember the details, only the feeling of being watched. In the morning, he decided to explore the house more thoroughly. It was a strange impulse, given that he had already been through every room, but something compelled him. He started in the basement, which he had only glanced at before. It was unfinished, concrete floor and walls, a few boxes stacked in one corner. He opened them, old Christmas decorations, mostly, Lights, ornaments, a small artificial tree. Nothing unusual. But in the last box, underneath a tangle of tinsel, he found a photo album. He pulled it out and opened it. The pictures were old, faded, from the 80s or 90s based on the clothing and hairstyles. Family. Mother, father, 2 children. The house in the background of several photos. This house. His house. He flipped through the pages slowly, studying the faces. The family looked happy, ordinary. Barbecues in the backyard, birthday parties, a Christmas morning. And then, near the back of the album, he stopped. In one of the photos, a birthday party scene, there was a figure in the background, partially obscured by other people standing near the fence. Dark hair, medium build, wearing a jacket. Daniel stared at it. The figure looked like him. Not exactly, the face was turned away, but the posture, the clothes, something about it was familiar. He closed the album and set it on the floor. His hands were shaking. He went upstairs and poured himself a glass of water, drank it standing at the sink. It was not him, could not have been. The photo was decades old. He had never been here before. He was sure of it, but the certainty was beginning to feel like a wall he kept throwing himself against, expecting it to break. He went back to Nancy's that afternoon, even though it was not his usual time. Lorraine was behind the counter, wiping it down. She looked up when he entered and smiled, but there was something different in her expression, a flicker of something he could not read. He sat down at the counter and ordered coffee. She poured it without a word. He wrapped his hands around the mug and tried to think of how to ask what he wanted to ask. Finally, he said, "How long has the house on Maple Street been empty?" Lorraine paused, the coffee pot still in her hand. "The one you're in?" she asked. He nodded. She set the pot down and thought about it. "A while," she said. "Maybe 6 months. Maybe longer." But he hesitated. "Just curious," he said. She looked at him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "It's a good house," she said. "People are always happy there." "Always," he repeated. She did not respond, just picked up the coffee pot and walked away to refill someone else's cup. Daniel sat there, staring into his coffee, trying to process what she had said. People, plural, as if there had been others before him. Renters, obviously. That made sense. But the way she said it, with that strange certainty, made it feel like more than that. He finished his coffee and left without saying goodbye. On the walk back, he noticed something he had not seen before. A man standing on the corner of Maple and 4th, just standing there, hands in his pockets, looking in Daniel's direction. Daniel slowed, then stopped. The man did not move. They stood there, maybe 30 feet apart, just looking at each other. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. He took a step forward, intending to ask if the man needed something. But as soon as he moved, the man turned and walked away, disappearing around the corner. Daniel followed, almost running. But when he reached the corner, the street was empty. No one. No cars, no people, nothing. He stood there, breathing hard, looking both ways. The man had vanished. Impossible, but true. That night, Daniel went through his things, everything he had brought with him. Clothes, toiletries, a laptop, a few books, some documents. He spread it all out on the living room floor and examined each item carefully, trying to find something that did not belong, something that would explain the growing sense that he was missing something crucial. Everything was his. He recognized it all. But recognition was not the same as memory. He realized, looking at the pile of his belongings, that he could not remember buying most of these things. The clothes fit, the laptop had his files on it, the books had his name written inside the front cover. But the act of acquiring them, the moment of purchase, the decision to own them, all of that was gone. He sat on the floor, surrounded by the evidence of his own life, and felt like a stranger to himself. The documents were the worst. A lease agreement for the house, signed in his handwriting. A driver's license with his photo. A bank statement showing deposits and withdrawals that implied a life of routine and stability. But when he tried to remember opening the bank account, or signing the lease, or even taking the photo for the license, there was nothing. Just a blank space where the memory should have been. He told himself it was stress, exhaustion, the aftereffects of whatever had brought him here. The therapist's words came back to him. The mind protects itself, but protected from what? He gathered everything back up and returned it to his bedroom, then lay down on the bed fully clothed. Sleep did not come. Instead, he stared at the ceiling and listened to the house. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the creak of settling wood, and something else so faint he might have imagined it. A voice or voices just below the threshold of hearing. He closed his eyes and tried to block it out, but it was there, a low murmur that seemed to come from the walls themselves. In the morning, he decided to go to the library. He needed to do something, anything, to break the growing sense of unreality that was settling over him like fog. The library was a small brick building on the corner of Main and 2nd, with wide windows and a hand-painted sign that looked like it had been there for decades. Inside, it smelled like old paper and dust, a comforting smell. There was one librarian at the desk, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked up when he entered and smiled. "Daniel," she said, "how can I help you?" He stopped. He had not told her his name. She saw his expression and laughed softly. "Small town," she said, echoing what Lorraine had told him days ago. "Everyone knows everyone." He nodded, though it did not quite make sense. He had been here less than a week. How had word spread so fast, and why? He asked if the library had any local history archives, newspapers, records. She nodded and led him to a back room, where rows of filing cabinets and shelves held bound volumes of newspapers, some dating back over 100 years. "Help yourself," she said. "Let me know if you need anything." He started with the most recent papers, working backward. He was not sure what he was looking for exactly. Something about the house, maybe, or the town, or himself, though he knew that was irrational. The papers were exactly what he expected. Small town news, school events, town council meetings, obituaries, wedding announcements. Nothing strange, nothing unusual. But as he went further back, he started noticing a pattern. Every few years, there was a small article almost hidden in the back pages about someone new moving to town. The articles were brief, just a few lines, but they all had the same tone. Welcoming, almost celebratory, and they all mentioned the same street, Maple Street. Different houses, different numbers, but always Maple Street. He wrote down the names and dates. 12 people over the last 40 years moving in, being welcomed. He looked for follow-up articles, anything about those people leaving or what happened to them. Nothing. It was as if they had arrived and then disappeared from the record entirely. He brought his findings to the librarian, the pages of notes he had scribbled, and asked if she knew anything about the people on his list. She looked at the names, her expression unchanging. "Of course," she said. "They all lived here. Some of them still do." He felt a flicker of relief. "So they did not disappear," he said. She smiled, but there was something off about it. Something that did not reach her eyes. "No," she said. "They're all part of the community now." He wanted to ask what that meant, but something stopped him. The way she was looking at him, patient, calm, as if waiting for him to understand something on his own. He thanked her and left, walking quickly back toward Maple Street. The sun was high, the day warm, and the town looked perfect, like a postcard. People waved as he passed. He did not wave back. When he reached his house, he went straight to the basement and pulled out the photo album again. He studied the birthday party photo, the figure in the background. Then he pulled out his phone and opened the camera, flipping it to selfie mode. He held the phone up and compared his face to the blurry figure in the photo. Could have been him. The angle was wrong, the resolution too low to be sure, but it could have been. He set the phone down and opened the album to the first page, looking at the family. Mother, father, 2 children. And then he noticed something he had missed before. In the very first photo, a wide shot of the house taken from the street, there was a car in the driveway. An older model sedan, dark blue. The same car, or one that looked exactly like it, was parked across the street from his house right now. He went to the window and looked out. The car was still there. He had seen it before, but had not thought anything of it. Just another neighbor's car. But now, seeing it in the photo, decades old, he felt his chest tighten. He went outside and walked toward it. The windows were tinted, too dark to see inside. He tried the door. Locked. He looked around, but no one was watching. He cupped his hands against the glass and peered in. The interior was empty, clean, no personal items, nothing that would indicate who owned it. But on the dashboard, partially hidden by the glare, was a piece of paper. He squinted, trying to read it. It looked like a note, handwritten. He could only make out a few words. "Welcome home." Daniel stepped back from the car, his heart pounding. He looked up and down the street. Empty. No one in their yards, no one walking. The houses stared back at him with blank windows. He went back inside and locked the door, then checked every window, every lock, every possible entry point. Everything was secure, but he did not feel secure. He felt trapped. That evening, he did not go to Nancy's. He did not leave the house. He sat in the living room with the lights off and watched the street through a gap in the curtains. The blue car did not move. No one came to check on it, no one got in or out. It just sat there, a silent presence. As night fell, lights came on in the neighboring houses. The same routine he had seen every night. People moving behind curtains, the glow of televisions. Everything normal, everything wrong. Around midnight, he saw something. A figure walking down the street, slow and deliberate. It was too dark to make out details, but the person was heading toward his house. Daniel's breath caught. He moved away from the window, pressed himself against the wall, and waited. The footsteps grew closer, then stopped. Silence. He counted to 60, then slowly looked out again. The figure was standing on his lawn, facing the house. Just standing there, completely still. Daniel's mind raced. He could call the police. He could go out and confront whoever it was. He could hide and hope they went away. But he did none of those things. He just watched. And then, slowly, the figure raised one hand and waved. Not a friendly wave, but a slow, deliberate motion, as if acknowledging something. Daniel felt ice run through his veins. The figure turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness between streetlights. He waited for hours, watching, but the figure did not return. By the time the sun started to rise, he was exhausted, his eyes burning. He must have dozed off in the chair, because when he opened his eyes, it was fully morning, and someone was knocking on his door. He got up slowly, every muscle stiff, and went to the door. He looked through the peephole. It was Lorraine from the diner holding a covered dish. He hesitated, then opened the door. She smiled at him, bright and cheerful. "Morning," she said. "I brought you some breakfast. Thought you might like a home-cooked meal for a change." He stared at her, trying to reconcile this kind gesture with the growing dread inside him. "Thank you," he said, taking the dish. She did not leave. She just stood there, looking at him with that same patient expression the librarian had worn. "Are you settling in okay?" she asked. He nodded. She tilted her head slightly. "You look tired," she said. "You should rest. This is a place for rest." The way she said it, with such certainty, made him want to close the door in her face. But he did not. He just nodded again. She reached out and patted his arm, a motherly gesture that felt invasive. "We take care of our own here," she said. "Remember that." She turned and walked back toward the street, leaving him standing in the doorway, holding the covered dish. He closed the door and set the dish on the kitchen counter without looking at it. He could not eat. His stomach was twisted in knots. He went upstairs and took a shower, letting the hot water run over him until it started to go cold. When he got out, he wiped the steam from the bathroom mirror and stared at his reflection. He looked the same. Same face, same eyes, same everything. But there was something in his expression that he did not recognize. A hollowness. He got dressed and went back downstairs. The covered dish was still on the counter. He lifted the foil. Eggs and toast. Exactly as he always ordered at Nancy's. He picked up the plate and carried it to the trash, dumping the food without hesitation. It felt like a small act of defiance, and it made him feel better, at least for a moment. He spent the rest of the day trying to find a way out of town. Not physically, he was not ready to leave yet, but mentally. He needed information. He needed to understand what was happening. He went back to the library and asked the librarian if there were any town records, anything about the founding, the history, the people who had built it. She brought him a thin book, self-published, with a plain cover. A short history of our town, it was called, written by someone named Margaret Holloway. He took it to a table and started reading. The town had been founded in 1873 by a group of families looking for a fresh start. That was the phrase used repeatedly. Fresh start. The book described the early years, the struggles, the growth, the way the community came together. It all sounded normal, even boring. But there was one section, near the end, that caught his attention. It described a tradition, something the town had done for over a century. Every few years, the community would welcome someone new, someone who needed a place to belong. The tradition was treated as something noble, generous. But the wording was strange. The newcomer would be embraced fully, the book said. Their past would be set aside, and they would become part of the fabric of the town. Set aside. Daniel read the sentence again. Not forgotten, not moved past, but set aside. As if it were still there, just out of reach. He closed the book and looked around the library. The librarian was watching him from the desk. When their eyes met, she smiled. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked. He nodded, though he had not. He returned the book and walked out, his mind spinning. Outside, the town was as it always was. Quiet, calm, perfect. He walked back to Maple Street, but instead of going to his house, he walked past it, down to the end of the block, and kept going. He wanted to see the edge of town, the place where it stopped and the rest of the world began. But as he walked, the streets seemed to loop back on themselves. He turned left, then right, then left again, but he kept ending up on familiar streets. Main Street, 2nd Street, Maple Street. He was going in circles. He stopped in the middle of the road and looked around. The sun was beginning to set, the light turning golden and soft. The town looked beautiful, picture perfect, and he realized, with a sinking feeling, that he had not seen a single road sign pointing out of town. No highway markers, no direction indicators. Nothing. He pulled out his phone and opened the map app. It loaded slowly, the spinning icon seeming to take forever. When it finally appeared, the map showed his location, a blue dot on Maple Street. But everything around it was blank. Just white space. No roads leading out, no neighboring towns. Nothing. He closed the app and opened it again. Same result. He tried a different map app. Same thing. His location and nothing else. He stood there, staring at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Then he heard footsteps behind him. He turned. It was the man from the diner, the one who had said they met at the hardware store. The man stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, and looked at Daniel with an expression that was hard to read. "You're trying to leave," the man said. It was not a question. Daniel did not answer. The man nodded, as if Daniel had confirmed something. "It doesn't work like that," he said. "Once you're here, you're here." Daniel felt anger flare in his chest. "What does that mean?" he demanded. The man looked almost sad. "It means you needed this," he said. "We all did. And now this is where we belong." He turned and walked away, leaving Daniel standing alone on the empty street. The anger faded, replaced by something heavier. Fear, maybe, or resignation. He walked back to his house slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he got inside, he went straight to the bedroom and pulled out his suitcase. He started packing, throwing clothes and belongings in without care. He would leave tonight, drive until he found a way out, even if he had to backtrack, even if it took hours. He finished packing and carried the suitcase downstairs. But when he opened the front door, he stopped. The blue car was parked in his driveway now, blocking him in. He set the suitcase down and walked toward the car. The windows were still too dark to see through. He tried the door again, still locked. He went around to the back, looking for a license plate. There was none, just a blank space where the plate should have been. He stood there, staring at the car, and felt something break inside him. Not a dramatic collapse, just a quiet crumbling, like a wall giving way slowly under pressure. He went back inside and sat on the couch, the suitcase abandoned by the door. He did not know how long he sat there. Hours, maybe. The light outside faded completely, and the house grew dark around him. He did not turn on any lights. He just sat, staring at nothing, trying to think. And then, slowly, memories started to come back. Not all at once, not in any clear order, but in fragments. A hospital room, white walls, a doctor's voice, calm and professional. A form he had signed, though he could not remember what it said. A woman crying, telling him it was for the best. His mother, or maybe his sister. The face was blurry. A sense of overwhelming exhaustion, the kind that made him want to stop existing, just for a little while. And then a question. Do you want to start over? Yes, he had said. Yes, I do. The memory faded, leaving him gasping. He stood up and paced the room, trying to hold on to it, but it was already slipping away, like water through his fingers. But it had been enough. He understood now, or at least part of it. He had chosen this. He had asked for it. Whatever this was, whatever the town was, he had agreed to it. The realization was both a relief and a horror. Relief because it meant he was not a victim, not entirely. Horror because it meant he was complicit. He sat back down, his hands shaking. The room felt different now, not safer, but more honest. He could feel the walls around him, not trapping him, but holding him. And for the first time since he arrived, he felt something other than fear. He felt tired, so deeply tired. He leaned back and closed his eyes, and sleep came quickly, pulling him under. He dreamed of the town, but it was different in the dream. The streets were full of people, all of them walking in the same direction, toward the center. He followed, unable to stop himself. When he reached the center, there was nothing there. Just an empty space, a clearing, and in the middle of it, a mirror. He walked up to it and looked at his reflection. But it was not him. It was someone else. Someone he did not recognize, wearing his clothes, standing in his place. He reached out to touch the mirror, and the reflection reached back. Their hands met, and the glass rippled like water. And then he was on the other side, looking back at himself, and the person in the mirror was screaming, but no sound came out. He woke with a start, gasping, his heart racing. The room was still dark. He fumbled for his phone and checked the time. 3 a.m. He got up and went to the window. The street was empty, the blue car still in his driveway. He stood there, watching, waiting for something to happen. And then he saw it. Lights coming on one by one in the houses across the street. Not the normal lights, but something brighter, harsher. And in each window, a figure appeared, standing, looking out, looking at him. He stepped back from the window, his breath coming in short gasps. The figures did not move. They just stood there, watching, their faces hidden in shadow. He counted them. 8 houses, 8 figures, all watching. He pulled the curtain closed and backed away, his mind racing. He needed to leave. Now, he ran to the front door and grabbed his suitcase. But when he opened the door, he froze. The figures were outside now, standing in a line on the lawn, facing the house. They were close enough that he could see their faces now, though he wished he could not. They were the people he had met. Lorraine, the librarian, the man from the diner, his neighbor, and others he did not recognize. They stood perfectly still, not threatening, not advancing, just waiting. Daniel, one of them said, sounded like Lorraine, "You don't have to be afraid. We're here to help." He slammed the door and locked it, his hands shaking so badly he could barely turn the bolt. He backed away, staring at the door, expecting it to burst open any second. But nothing happened. The house was silent. He ran upstairs, taking the steps 2 at a time, and locked himself in the bedroom. He pulled out his phone and tried to call for help, but there was no signal. He tried again and again, but the screen just showed no service. He threw the phone on the bed and went to the window. The figures were still on the lawn, standing in their line, looking up at him. And then, slowly, they started to move, not toward the house, but away from it, back toward their own homes. They walked calmly, deliberately, as if their job was done. Within minutes, the lawn was empty again, and the street was dark. Daniel stood at the window, shaking, trying to understand what had just happened. They had not tried to hurt him. They had not even tried to come inside. They had just stood there, waiting. For what? He did not know. He stayed awake the rest of the night, sitting on the bed, watching the door. But no one came. When the sun rose, the town looked exactly as it always did. Normal, peaceful, perfect. He went downstairs slowly, half expecting to find the figure still there, but the lawn was empty. The blue car was gone from the driveway. He opened the front door cautiously and looked outside. Nothing. He stepped out onto the porch. The air was cool, fresh. The morning quiet except for birds singing. Could have been any other day. He went back inside and made coffee, his hands still trembling. As he sat at the kitchen table, sipping the bitter liquid, he tried to think logically. What were his options? He could try to leave again, but something told him it would not work. He could confront the townspeople, demand answers, but he already knew they would not give him any. Or he could stay, accept it, let whatever process this was continue. The thought made him sick, but it was also the only option that felt real. Over the next few days, Daniel did not leave the house. He stayed inside, eating what little food he had left, avoiding the windows. But the isolation was worse than the fear. The silence pressed in on him, suffocating, and he found himself longing for interaction, even if it meant facing the people who had stood on his lawn. On the fourth day, he broke. He needed to see another person, needed to hear a voice that was not his own. He walked to Nancy's, half expecting it to be closed, or empty, or something worse. But it was open, and Lorraine was behind the counter, smiling at him as he walked in. "Daniel," she said warmly, "we've missed you. Where have you been?" He did not answer. He just sat down at the counter and stared at the menu, though he did not read it. She poured him coffee without asking, set it in front of him, and waited. Finally, he looked up at her. "What is this place?" he asked quietly. Her smile did not falter. "It's home," she said simply. He shook his head. "No," he said. "What is it really? Why can't I leave? Why do you all act like you know me?" She leaned forward, her expression kind, almost maternal. "Because we do know you, Daniel," she said. "And you know us, even if you don't remember yet. This is where people come when they need to start over. When the world has taken too much from them. We give them a place to rest, to heal, to forget." "Forget," he repeated. She nodded. "The things that hurt you, the things that broke you, you don't need to carry them anymore. Here, you can be anyone you want to be, or no one at all." He felt tears prick at his eyes, though he did not know why. "But I didn't choose this," he said. She reached across the counter and took his hand. "Yes, you did," she said gently. "You just don't remember. And that's okay. That's the point." He pulled his hand away, stood up, and walked out without another word. He could feel her watching him as he left, but she did not follow. Back at the house, he tore through his belongings again, more frantically this time, looking for something, anything that would prove he had a life before this place. But everything he found only raised more questions. A receipt from a store in town, dated 3 months ago. He had only been here a week. A photo on his phone of him standing in front of his house, smiling, the metadata showing it was taken last year. He had no memory of it. A note, folded in the pocket of a jacket he had not worn yet, written in his own handwriting. "You're safe now. Don't look back." He crumpled the note and threw it across the room. This was not real. Could not be real. But it was. He could feel it in his bones, in the way the town fit around him like a glove, in the way people looked at him with familiarity and affection. He was not a stranger here. He had never been a stranger. He sat on the floor, surrounded by the scattered pieces of his life, and tried to remember. Not the fragments, not the flashes, but the whole thing. Who he had been before. What had happened to him. Why he had needed to forget. The memories came slowly, painfully, like pulling teeth. A marriage that had fallen apart. Years of it, the slow decay, the fights, the silence. A job he had lost or quit, he could not remember which. Debts piling up. A sense of failure so deep it felt like drowning. And then a breakdown. He could not remember the details, just the feeling. The weight of it pressing down on him until he could not breathe, could not move, could not think. And then someone offering him a way out. A program, they had called it. a place where he could go to recover, to reset. He had signed papers. He had agreed to everything. And then nothing. Until he woke up in a car, driving toward a town he had never heard of, with a set of keys in his hand and a life waiting for him that was not quite his own. The realization settled over him like a shroud. This was not a kidnapping. This was not some supernatural horror. This was something he had done to himself, or something that had been done to him with his permission. The town was not a prison. It was a sanctuary, and the price of that sanctuary was forgetting. He sat there for a long time, letting the truth sink in. And then, slowly, he started to laugh. It was not a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone who had just realized the punchline to a joke that was not funny. He had wanted to disappear, and he had. Completely. He had wanted to start over, and he had. But the version of himself that had made that choice, the version that had been in so much pain he was willing to erase himself to escape it, was gone. And in its place was this. A hollow man, living in a hollow town, surrounded by other hollow people who had all made the same choice. He stood up and walked to the window. The street was empty, as always, but now he saw it differently, not as a trap but as a refuge. And the people, they were not captors. They were guides. They had all been where he was now. They had all gone through the same process of remembering and forgetting, and they had all chosen to stay. Because leaving meant going back to whatever they had run from. And that was worse than this. He understood now. The town did not hold people against their will. It just made leaving impossible to imagine. And slowly, over time, the desire to leave would fade, like everything else. He would forget why he had ever wanted to go. He would forget who he had been. And one day, he would be standing on someone else's lawn, welcoming them, telling them they were safe, telling them they were home. And he would mean it. The next morning, Daniel went back to Nancy's. Lorraine smiled at him, and he smiled back. The usual, she asked, and he nodded. The food tasted better than it had before. Or maybe he was just more willing to accept it. He ate slowly, savoring each bite, and when he was done, he paid and left a generous tip. "Thank you," he said to Lorraine on his way out. She patted his arm. "Anytime, sweetheart," she said. Over the following weeks, Daniel stopped trying to leave. He stopped searching for answers. He fell into the rhythm of the town, the quiet routine of it, and found it comforting. He walked the same streets every day, saw the same faces, had the same conversations. And slowly, the edges of his memory started to blur. He could not remember his wife's name anymore, or what his job had been, or why he had been so unhappy. It all felt distant, like a dream he had once had but could no longer recall. One day, he walked past his house and realized he did not remember what it had looked like when he first arrived. Felt like he had always been there, like the house had always been his. He went inside and looked at the photo album he had found in the basement. The family in the pictures were strangers now. Even the figure in the background, the one he had thought was him, just looked like someone else. He closed the album and put it back in the box. It did not matter anymore. None of it mattered. What mattered was that he was here, and he was safe, and he did not hurt anymore. That evening, as he sat on the porch watching the sunset, his neighbor walked over. Richard or Robert, Daniel still was not sure. The man stood at the edge of the lawn, hands in his pockets, looking up at the sky. "Beautiful night," he said. Daniel nodded. "It is," he said. The man looked at him. "You're settling in well," he said. Daniel smiled. "I am," he said, and he meant it. Months passed, or maybe it was years. Time moved strangely in the town, each day blending into the next until it was impossible to tell them apart. Daniel's life became a series of repetitions. Wake, walk to Nancy's, come home, sit on the porch, sleep. Wake, walk to Nancy's, come home, sit on the porch, sleep. He did not mind. It was peaceful, and peace was all he had ever wanted. Sometimes, late at night, he would have flashes of memory. A face he used to know, a place he used to live, a feeling he used to have. But the flashes were brief, and they faded quickly, like embers dying. He did not try to hold onto them. One afternoon, a new person moved in down the street. Daniel watched from his window as the car pulled into the driveway, as the person got out and looked around with wide, uncertain eyes. Daniel recognized that look. He had worn it once. He waited a few days, giving the person time to settle in, and then he walked over. The person was standing on the porch, holding a box, looking lost. Daniel smiled. "Hey," he said. "Welcome to the neighborhood." The person looked at him, startled, then smiled back tentatively. "Thanks," they said. Daniel nodded. "It's a good place," he said. "You'll like it here." The person looked around, taking in the quiet street, the neat houses, the perfect lawns. "I hope so," they said. Daniel could see the doubt in their eyes, the fear. He remembered that too. "It'll take some time," he said gently, "but you'll get there." The person nodded, though they did not look convinced. Daniel turned to walk away, then paused and looked back. "If you need anything, just ask," he said. "We take care of our own here." The person smiled again, more genuine this time. "Thank you," they said. Daniel walked back to his house, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction. He had helped. He had done what Lorraine and the others had done for him. He had welcomed someone, and in doing so, he had become part of the system. Not a victim, not a prisoner, but a participant. He sat on his porch and watched as the sun set, the sky turning shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful. It had always been beautiful. And as the light faded and the stars began to appear, Daniel closed his eyes and let himself forget. Forget who he had been. Forget what he had lost. Forget why he had ever wanted anything other than this. He was home. He had always been home. And he always would be. The next morning, Daniel did not wake up. Or rather, he did, but something was different. He opened his eyes and stared at the ceiling, and for a moment he felt nothing. No fear, no confusion, no curiosity. Just a vast, empty calm. He got out of bed and went through his routine, but it felt automatic, like watching someone else live his life. At Nancy's, Lorraine greeted him with her usual warmth, but he could not quite remember why she felt familiar. The food tasted the same. The coffee was hot. Everything was as it should be. But there was a distance now, a separation between him and the world around him. He was there but not fully, present but not engaged. He walked home slowly, noticing things he had not seen before. Or maybe he had, and he had just forgotten. The way every house on Maple Street looked the same, not identical but similar enough to blur together. The way the people he passed all smiled the same smile.